Hi folks, I've been wanting to do this video for a second, and I'm so glad that I'm doing this today on July the 16th, because today, July the 16th, is the day when Mercury enters its shadow degrees, or what is maybe called its shadow period, for the upcoming Mercury retrograde on August the 5th, or rather, well, depending on where you are, it's either going to be August the 4th or August the 5th. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about all this. First, I'm going to give you the dates up front so we can get done with that, and then we can go into talking about what all of this really means. That way, this is in the beginning of the video, and if you want to pause and rewind, you can do it now, or if you go through the video and decide you want to write the dates down, you can always come back to the beginning of the video and go through it. So Mercury enters its shadow today, July the 16th. Now I'm here Pacific time, so it's 8:52 p.m. Pacific time. And the Mercury retrograde, the shadow degrees, are from 21 degrees of Leo to 4 degrees of Virgo. It's really 21 degrees, 24 minutes of Leo, and 4 degrees, 6 minutes of Virgo, if you care that much about the minutes. But 21 degrees, and in about, 6.5, 7 hours, Mercury will enter its shadow degrees. Mercury goes retrograde on August the 4th at 9:56 p.m. Pacific time. Now, August the 4th is also the day of the Leo new moon, so we'll build on that. Now, Mercury, so to be clear, Mercury is currently in the sign of Leo. I feel like I want to tell you some more information, so I'm going to. I don't know to what extent this is actually relevant. It may not be. Mercury entered Leo on July the 2nd. Mercury is currently in Leo. On July the 28th, Mercury will go into Virgo. So let's start this again. July the 2nd, Mercury comes into Leo. July the 16th, today, Mercury enters its shadow degrees at 21 degrees Leo. July the 28th, Mercury goes into Virgo. August the 4th, Mercury goes retrograde. Venus, which is currently in Leo and has been in Leo since July the 11th, enters Virgo on the same day as the new moon in Leo and Mercury going retrograde, August the 4th. Mercury retrograde conjuncts Venus in the sign of Virgo on August the 7th. And on August the 13th, Mercury comes back into Leo. So Mercury is really retrograde in Virgo for only the first 4 degrees. To repeat, Mercury comes into Leo on July the 2nd. It enters its shadow degrees July the 16th. It goes into Virgo July the 28th. It goes retrograde August the 4th, the same day that Venus comes into Leo. And on August the 7th, they meet up in Virgo. On August the 4th, in case I misspoke, Venus enters Virgo. And then on August the 7th, a retrograde Mercury and Venus meet up in Virgo. And then August the 13th, Mercury is back in Leo. On August the 18th, a retrograde Mercury conjuncts the Sun. And on August the 18th, we also have the full moon in Aquarius. And that full moon in Aquarius will be opposing the Sun and Mercury retrograde conjunct. The Sun and Mercury retrograde conjunct will be in Leo. The moon will be in Aquarius. And that Sun-Mercury conjunction will be squaring Uranus in Taurus. On August the 28th, Mercury will be back to where it is today at 21 degrees Leo. And it will go direct on August the 28th. On September the 9th, it will enter the sign of Virgo, Mercury will. And on September the 11th, Mercury will leave its shadow degrees. On that day, August the 18th, when a retrograde Mercury and the Sun meet up, Mercury will start his Mercury cycle in Leo and end the current Mercury cycle of Aries that started up in April during the last Mercury retrograde. Let's go through these dates again. Mercury entered Leo July the 2nd. Mercury enters its shadow degrees at 21 degrees Leo today, July 16th. Mercury enters Virgo on July 28th. Venus enters Virgo on August the 4th, the same day. Venus is also currently in Leo since July the 11th. Venus enters Virgo on July the 4th, the same day Mercury goes retrograde. And on on August the 4th, God, I must be doing a Mercury retrograde video, right? Because I can barely get the months and the dates. This is precisely the kind of thing that Mercury retrograde affects. Mercury is not retrograde currently. I'm just very amused by I'm trying to cater to various audiences with regard to what dates are relevant for you. So Mercury in Leo, July the 2nd. Mercury enters shadow degrees, July the 16th. Mercury retrograde, Mercury enters Virgo, July the 28th. Mercury retrograde, August the 4th, the same day Venus enters Virgo. August the 7th, Mercury retrograde and Venus conjunct in Virgo. August the 13th, Mercury back in Leo. August the 18th, Mercury retrograde and the Sun conjunct, and the Moon is opposite them in Aquarius. The full moon in Aquarius, and the Mercury, and let's just say that full moon in Aquarius plus the Sun and Mercury in Leo are going to be squaring Uranus. That is an edgy, that is quite an edgy full moon, and I'm going to talk about that. On August the 28th, Mercury comes back to where it's going to be today, to 21 degrees Leo, and it goes direct. On September the 9th, a direct Mercury now enters Virgo again, and on September the 11th, Mercury leaves its shadow degrees at 4 degrees of Virgo on September the 11th, and that is the Mercury retrograde. So Mercury goes retrograde on August the 4th, direct on the 28th, enters its shadow period on July the 16th, and leaves the shadow period on September 11th, for those of you who only care about that. What happens with every Mercury retrograde is that after the conjunction of the Sun keeps moving forward and Mercury falls behind and Mercury follows. So right now we're in this trend where Mercury is entering a sign first. Communication related to the sign it enters starts up. Venus is entering second, providing the opportunity. The Sun is entering third, providing the illumination, and the new moon occurs, providing time for action. As I have said to everybody, placing this Mercury retrograde in context and these Mercury degrees in context, and what I have to share today actually links up quite well with the weekly overview that I did yesterday. Because this week, Mercury, which is direct, is going to trine Chiron and square Uranus. And those are the two aspects that Mercury is going to make 3 times during this retrograde. Mercury direct will trine Chiron on July the 18th, square Uranus on July the 21st, the day of the Capricorn full moon, enter into Virgo, go retrograde, come back into Leo, square Uranus, trine Chiron, get back to where it is today, go direct, and then trine Chiron again and square Uranus for the 3rd time. This brings up the question that I brought up in yesterday's weekly overview. What is coming up for us this week, perhaps? What is coming up for us this week that could be seen as some sort of forward movement or development related to the general direction that we've been trying to go, where the forward movement, the energy, the excitement, the expansion has been in the Aries and the Taurus parts of our chart, where Chiron is in Aries, where Uranus is in Taurus. What actions need to be done? What communication occurs in the sign of Leo? What a value is presented in the sign of Leo? That as we head to the end of July, we can remain in forward motion and movement on and keep going. But then August hits and it is time to go back to the drawing board, because we learn something typical of Mercury retrograde that was in our blind spot, or we find out something, or we realize something. It could be, as I've said to you before, it could be something intuitive we glossed over, where it was like, but we could not get the facts on it. It could be something that we weren't aware of at all. Sometimes the people and the projects and the things that we're in communication with, even though people don't mean to be hurtful or harmful, even though the way they're planning things, it has an element of fantasy and fantasy talk around, oh yeah, this is what this is going to be. Oh no, yeah, this is how I'm going to do this. And this is what this is going to be. And this is what this is going to be. And we go along with it. There's positivity, there's forward movement. And then Mercury says, okay, at 4 degrees of Virgo, on August the 4th, I need to reverse. Planet of communication, facts, data, thinking, what we know as fact, what we're making and basing our plans on, details. Of course, when Mercury goes retrograde and when Mercury goes direct and when Mercury has its cazimi or its conjunction with the Sun. So those would be August the 4th, Mercury going retrograde, August the 18th, Mercury and the Sun conjuncting on the date of the Aquarius full moon, and Mercury going direct August the 28th. Those are the 3 days that are notorious for the mundane kind of Mercury retrograde activities we ascribe to Mercury retrograde. Delays, confusion, misspeaking, reading 6:55 a.m. on a train ticket or a plane ticket when it says p.m. or p.m. when it says a.m. and all that ensues, losing baggage, having conversations with customer service because you got a delivery of something and it's incomplete and the conversation is absolutely bananas because it's as if both people are not speaking the same language at all. And then of course when Mercury goes retrograde, it all kind of magically resolves and solves itself. Crossed wires, delays, issues with transportation, whether it is public transportation, so Ubers or Lyfts or your own vehicles, issues with technology. If you know that you have some piece of technology or equipment that is getting close to being on its last legs, consider backing things up over the next week and a half by the end of July. So that when Mercury goes retrograde and things kind of fall apart, you don't lose everything. You are ready and you are prepared. Those are the mundane kind of issues we deal with. I thought I left enough time for this meeting. I can't believe I'm delayed. Why is Zoom acting up all of a sudden? Why is the Wi-Fi not working? I remember last time in April, I was taking a train to go somewhere on the day Mercury went retrograde, and there was a boulder or stone that appeared on the train tracks, and the trains on that day were totally messed up, back and forth. And the communication around them was messed up. So whatever apps people were checking, it wasn't updating. So people showed up at the train station thinking the train would come, and it did not come, and it did not come, and it did not come. So you went to the website, and that's when you learned. And then the estimate time when a train would come kept shifting and kept changing. And once you got on the train, your assumption that you were going to get somewhere at a certain time was completely shifting by the next 15, 20 minutes. That kind of mundane craziness that ultimately is nothing but on the day of can create wreckage, Mercury's retrograde today. I'm going to leave an extra 2 hours to do this, and all of a sudden, for some reason, it isn't enough. Traffic jams, Anyway, you get the gist about the mundane side of Mercury retrograde that may, around the dates of August the 4th, August the 18th, and August the 28th, peak, be at their maximum. The other thing to look out for as we head towards August the 4th around that date and August the 28th is if some sort of reality check details, facts emerge around August the 4th that then reach a kind of confirmation or a conclusion by August the 28th. Very often something comes up as a reality check or a fact check around the first day of Mercury retrograde that you're processing then for the next 3 weeks. And when Mercury is getting ready to go direct, you reach some sort of a confirmation or a conclusion or I hesitate to say resolution. Certainly this idea of a reality check still applies. If you end up getting a proposal or a contract or something you have to sign or commit to during Mercury retrograde, you should assume that the chances are very, very strong that as Mercury goes direct and when Mercury is direct, those facts may change. Someone may think something is going to take 2 days or 3 days, or someone may think that a particular role is, if you're interviewing for a role or a position, is going to look like this, and they're making commitments to you. Someone may think that a couple of days that you have to commit to, there's a conference, there's a meeting, it's going to go on this way as far as the agenda is concerned, something along those lines. And as Mercury goes direct or after it, you realize they're like, oh, we thought it would take 2 days, it's going to take 1 day. Oh, we thought it was going to be this, but actually it's going to be this. And you're just like, oh my God, I made my plans according to this. It's more complicated if you've signed something that is more serious, like a job, like a home, like a more serious contract that then needs to be revised, because then you've got to contend with that revision. This is one of the reasons with Mercury retrograde we always say try not to sign contracts and make agreements and decisions. It's actually time to go back to the drawing board based on the data that is coming up. If you have to, ensure that relevant details are documented accurately in whatever it is that you're signing. So if the idea is that something has to change, but whoever you're signing this with still has to honor XYZ, make sure it is there in writing. For example, you don't always have that power. If you're not going to be a CEO or a CIO, a legal counsel, and you're not going to be guaranteed, it doesn't have to be that severe. Sometimes the reality of what is happening can be sorted out. It could be that in August you agree to, or you're signing, or you're interviewing for a position, and then in September, the reality around it sits. But sometimes those things that we agree to take on when Mercury is retrograde, they are shorter lived than we might think. Now, shorter lived doesn't have to mean that a position is only going to last a month or two. It could just mean that you think, oh, I could be here 5 or 7 years, and you realize that you're here a year or two because the footing on it or what was being thought was not entirely clear. Sometimes these things can get resolved when Mercury is direct. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, as I have told you lots and lots of times, you might find that the Mercury retrograde period is astonishingly decisive for you. You reach decisions more quickly. You feel more in sync with processing what is going on around you. You, of course, are potentially at the mercy of other people spinning around backwards, but you might find that you feel like, all right, this is what I'm going to do, this is what this is going to look like, etc. The rest of the time, often people who have Mercury retrograde in their birth charts spin a lot or take a lot of time to process and mull over and kind of break things apart and try to sort them out, in the idea of sort of analysis paralysis. And it's not really paralysis as much as it is a kind of a mulling over of things. What is the truth? What is the most factual way to do this? Those folks that you find you're having dinner or drinks with who just will not let something go. Very often people have Mercury retrograde in their birth charts. Other people around them feel like, why does it take them so long to say certain things? Or sometimes people have their own sense of time and timing. They can run late, that kind of stuff. But for Mercury retrograde people who have Mercury retrograde in their birth charts, Mercury retrograde periods might feel just the opposite as they feel for others, much more decisive. And if you have to sign something while Mercury is retrograde, it could be that the energy of that is clearer for you. You're going to have to gauge that because you're still dependent on who is writing or creating whatever is being presented to you. On August the 4th, as I said, we have the Leo new moon. Mercury's relationship to Leo is not as strong this year. Last year, we had Mercury going retrograde on pretty much to the day of the Virgo new moon. It happened in September, I think. And that was a different story altogether because Virgo is ruled by Mercury. And so whatever that new moon in 2023, the Virgo new moon brought up, it didn't really get going. It brought up things that you would expect a new moon to bring up, but it didn't become clear and it did not yield results until Mercury went direct. So it was October, November, December, January that brought, until Mercury, October, November, December, that brought brought progress. Very often, if a project is taken on and significant work is done on it while Mercury is retrograde, that project resurrects itself somehow during Mercury retrograde periods. And you have the sense of, oh, how interesting. I worked on this while Mercury was retrograde, and here it is again. The next iteration of it is getting processed somehow. So projects that either started or related to or had some significant events happen while Mercury is retrograde may come up for you again and again during Mercury retrograde periods. Remember we did this? Well, we're ready to move forward on this in this way. Remember this happened? It's so funny. I feel like I have something sitting on the top of my head, but it's just my hair. But on a larger scale of things, outside of these mundane items, it is Mercury, the planet of knowing and cognition, saying, I need to make sure that you're really clear about what's going on about something. And then Mercury reverses and says, let's just go over these degrees one more time. Reverses, goes direct, 21 degrees of Leo this time around to 4 degrees of Virgo. I said something in the weekly overview that I have to say I want to be very clear on. When I talked about opportunities that may be affected by Mercury retrograde, I mean opportunities that really start to come to you. They could be opportunities that came to you after July 5th, after the Cancer new moon. Be careful of the opportunities that come to you between July the 5th and July the 11th, because at that time Venus is still in Cancer and not in Leo. It's approaching Leo. But if something showed up around July 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and you did some work on it around July 7th, 8th, while Venus was still in Cancer and getting ready to oppose Pluto as it entered Leo, that may have been one of those things where you were just like, there's a power dynamic issue or something about this I need to watch here. But Venus coming into Leo was really on July the 11th. So it could be that something made its way to you between July 5th to 11th that you may have to see, well, was that an opportunity that I need to consider as part of this? But at the same time, Mercury himself entered Leo on July the 2nd. It's the first of the planets to enter Leo, starting what we will call Leo season. My definition of Leo season is different from sort of the conventional definition of when the sun is transiting Leo. Leo season for me started around July 2nd when Mercury entered Leo. And communication began related to the house occupied by Leo in your birth chart. Venus came in July 12th. Here are potential relationship, artistic, financial opportunities. Here's, as part of this annual set of transits of Mercury and Venus and the Sun and the new moon on August the 4th. August the 4th to September 2nd is the month of Leo. For the bulk of it, Mercury is going to be retrograde in Leo. So while the Mercury retrograde does not rule the new moon in Leo, we can't completely ignore it. Could be that on a slightly smaller scale, whatever the Leo new moon presents us on August the 4th, between August the 4th and September the 2nd, doesn't really get going until we hit September, October, and November, once Mercury is direct and it starts to gather speed. Progress on it. And it could be that some things that started communication after July the 2nd that became more tangible opportunities after July the 11th, or maybe between July 5th and 11th, that they, something about them needs to be, we need more information and details and data about them, and we don't know that yet. The best we can do right now when Mercury enters his shadow degrees is two things. Keep moving forward in the direction that we want to with the opportunities that are showing up, the tasks that necessity is asking us to do to manage crises. If you need to look for a job, if you need to improve your finances in some way, these are typical things. If you need to address certain relationship issues that really feel massively toxic. Whether they are opportunities or whether it is pressure based on your circumstances, doors opening, doors closing, whether it is related to the direction that you have wanted to move in, symbolized by the Aries and Taurus part of your chart, particularly the Aries part of the chart since April the 19th of last year, 2023. Keep going forward to the best of your ability, knowing, and if you need to commit to something, and it feels like this is good to go, this is a no-brainer, this is a slam dunk, hear me when I say that. If you need to commit to something that is a no-brainer and a slam dunk and you feel no concerns or questions about it, through the end of July, particularly as we head to this full moon on Sunday, from a general reading perspective, I think you can consider it. I mean, take a look at your own chart if you know and see what's going on in your chart and what aspects are being made, etc., to the natal planets in your chart. But it's fine. I think it's going to be a little more interesting than that. I think that if something has come up, you may be thinking, this is intriguing, but there are things about it that still need to be sorted out. You know, these dates go very well with the idea of starting up the second half of this year. The timing is, July the 2nd is when Mercury enters Leo. We are still in the month of Cancer. The Cancer new moon is still active. July is still a month of forward movement linked to May, June, and July after the April Mercury retrograde and eclipses. And that is what is primary. If you want to feel like, what do I need to do this week? Take a look at my weekly overview from yesterday. This is one of those videos that is talking about a particular transit. And the second thing related to this transit that I want you to consider is start to pay attention to what comes up between July 16th and August the 4th. And when Mercury goes retrograde August the 4th, around that time, and around August the 18th and around August the 28th, see if something related to that comes back again, because those are the degrees where Mercury is going to go back and forth. And the two aspects he's going to make are trining Chiron in Aries, squaring Uranus in Taurus. The two parts of the chart, Aries and Taurus, that have symbolized for us our most forward-looking, adventurous, possibility-laden, next step, sense of longing, adventure, intuitive direction, opportunities. We have no idea whether they will happen or not. We do not end that part of the journey, particularly the Aries solar North Node eclipses, as I've said to you, till the end of the first week of June at least. So April 19th of 2023 to, let's say, June the 7th of 2025 is an arc related to those Aries North Node and Libra South Node eclipses. And this particular Mercury retrograde plays a role in that. The last solar eclipse in Aries on April the 8th, as I mentioned numerous times, was conjunct Chiron to the minute. This Mercury retrograde trines Chiron for the first time in 2 days' time. The next day, Venus from Leo trines the North Node in Aries. Does something start up? Depending on where Leo sits in your chart, it could be that something starts up a little bit more behind the scenes. By the time it is offered to you, you may start to get the facts and say, oh, that is when this started to brew and had my name attached to it, even though I heard about it on such and such or whatever it is. But for some other people, there may be something that is coming up that really feels a lot more concrete. The trine to Chiron encourages, because Mercury is going to trine Chiron. Venus, of course, will trine Chiron as she goes through Leo into Virgo by the end of this month. The Sun will trine Chiron before the end of, actually no, the Sun will trine Chiron in August. The Sun enters Leo on July the 23rd of this year. But the trines to the North Node, the trines to Chiron, the Sun will make those as well. Early in next year, Mars will make those trines to the North Node in Chiron. I just sort of started thinking out loud a little bit. But the trine to Chiron promoting a return to ourselves so that our decision making related to the direction we want to go in is coming from a much more healed, much more a return to ourselves and who we are. A healing of a kind of primal wound in the Aries part of the chart, related to the Aries part of the chart, that may go back to childhood, that the chart or the transits are insisting, are asking that we become conscious of them, understand where they came from, understand what they felt like, understand the impact they've had on us. Chiron heals, but the healing process, as I mentioned to you before, is never just a joy. You have to become aware of the wound. You have to become aware of what is going on in order for it to be healed. But there's a return to a kind of primal, unsullied self that we were born with, that wasn't conditioned out of alignment, related to the Aries part of the chart. Somewhere healing that and acting from a healed place allows us to move in the direction that we wanted to move towards in an easier way since April the 19th of last year. With this direction we are trying to move in, because it is the North Node eclipses, remain emotionally and financially grounded. Try to give it a strong, realistic and secure foundation so that you are just not, you don't realize that are sort of the desire may be legitimate and the forward movement may seem very real and very, very much part of something you feel is right and you need to do, but in the process you just kind of disrupt your finances in a way that just does a number on you. Try not to do that. You can still move forward in a grounded way in that direction. But the Mercury retrograde, whatever is crystallizing in the Leo part of the chart, as I said, till the end of July, it's still all clear. All we can do between now and the end of the July is observe. Oh, Mercury's trining Chiron in a couple of days' time. Okay. Oh, Mercury's going to square Uranus at the end of this week on the day of the Capricorn full moon on July the 21st. Okay, for the first time. What is coming up? Venus trines the North Node on the 19th. I'm going back to the weekly overview. These dates are shared there. The video I did yesterday. Interesting. And then Mercury goes, sorry folks, you are putting your eggs in a basket in a certain way, and there are certain things that you do not know, or you may have intuitively felt but are not clear about. I need to make them clear to you. And as I said, as you head towards August 4th, around August the 18th, when the retrograde Mercury is conjunct the Sun, starting up the Mercury cycle in Leo and opposed by a full moon in Aquarius. As we look at August the 28th, those are dates where critical information, not only can the generic kind of Mercury retrograde events that we expect peak, but we can also, information that is shared that can peak. You know, this past April, it was less about what was revealed to me, but no, this last April while Mercury was retrograde, I became very clear about what opportunities I was entertaining that were going to be open and that were going to be closed. I will say the information I gleaned was not yang, insofar as I didn't have a conversation and realize something was going on. I just, finally a certain amount of clarity dawned on me to go, I'm pursuing this, but this makes no sense. And it was a very clear, this is what I mean by this quality of going back to the drawing board. I'm moving ahead. The example I most like to give archetypally is you're interviewing for a position, there are 3 people, you get a first round, you get a second round, you get a third round, you're so excited, Mercury goes retrograde and you realize they always had an internal candidate in mind. Or one of the people has another favorite, or you realize something like that and you're like, and sometimes what Mercury retrograde reveals can be really disappointing. And you realize, oh my God, in the process of this, I was making certain assumptions. But also, how could I not have been making certain assumptions based on what everybody was saying? And guess what? Everybody was also saying how this would roll out and what would happen. And sometimes everybody just kind of starts to get on a broomstick and swishing around. And then Mercury retrograde goes, what are the facts here again? Can we reveal them? And the fact that something that you had put your eggs in a certain basket doesn't work out, if you deal with that, you can think in the moment, oh my God, it's not going to be this. What am I going to do? But there's something to this idea of you've gotten what you needed to out of this. Just try and take your eggs and find the next basket because things keep moving on. Or is there something about, this is also a very important point, is there something about what you are learning about what is real that can be incorporated in the way that you're thinking about moving forward? If you learn that there's an internal candidate, or if you learn that one person has this, does it open a possibility for you somewhere in the way that you're handling the communications and the assumptions and how things are moving forward in a way that all is not lost? It could have Mercury retrograde, and what it brings up could have a kind of 5 of Cups feeling in the tarot, where there are 5 cups, 3 have been spilled, but 2 remain upright. So it makes sense to mourn the 3 cups that have been spilled. And in the moment when something like that happens, it can absolutely be a totally fair way to feel about things. But what this person is not doing at this point in time is saying, okay, I do have 2 cups standing upright. What am I going to do with and about those? And life keeps moving forward. Whatever it is that you're learning something about, I think it's a fair question to ask. Oh, wow, did this Mercury retrograde just reveal something? Rejection is God's protection. You may not be rejected from something. The universe may reject something for you in its current guise. And you really later on go, thank God I did not put all my eggs in that basket. It may take a certain amount of distance to do that, because then other things come back around. But the thing to start to be conscious of is, number 1, till the end of July, it's still forward movement. Because we're just talking about Mercury retrograde. We've got to keep all the other aspects in mind as well. All the other transits that are occurring right now. Till the end of July forward. And certainly, absolutely till the 28th, this week and next week. If you want to move in a certain direction, if you're availing of opportunities, if you're closing things out, even the act of closing things out, you know what? I don't know if this will happen. I don't know if I'm going to get from point A to point Z. I don't know if this direction is going to come through. But guess what? I am going to start acting as if and start preparing. Now, I'm not saying that you should get rid of things that you think you might need or whatever it is, but there might be certain things that you feel like, I've got to start working on this no matter what. And so there's something about being propelled into action this week and next week that remains paramount. Because by the time Mercury goes direct and you head into September, October till the middle of November, forward movement again. And after September might be a fair amount of acceleration. After October 2nd, that eclipse on October 2nd in Libra, we might be reminded of where we were on October the 14th of last year, 2023, when we had the solar eclipse in Libra. And we may have become more conscious of what it is that we need to release if we are trying to get from point A to point B. As I said, the second thing is pay attention between July 16th and August the 4th. What comes up that during that time that Mercury, in a very literal sense, is going to be going over while it's retrograde and then direct again. I will tell you, with Mercury retrograde, it is not always the shadow period dates that are relevant or important with regard to what occurs. It can go back further. It's a larger thing. It's a larger thing. So if we take the example of that interview, it doesn't mean that the interviews have to happen between July the 16th and August the 4th for it to be reconsidered. It could be that you're already in that process. I mean, I would say it may make sense to really think about what has started up since July the 2nd. What has started up as an opportunity and made its presence felt since July the 11th. And how much of what has come up feels like, in the way things currently stand, I still have question marks around it. It looks promising, it looks exciting, it looks interesting, but there's still details that need to be ironed out. It could be that it's August that presents those details, and then we start to move forward again in September. And some of those details may become really important around August the 4th, 18th, and 28th, but indeed during that entire Mercury retrograde period between August 4th and 28th, to understand what they are, so that your plans are sounder and you're moving forward investing in the right opportunities and people. And if something shows up that is disappointing, ask yourself, well, does this mean that this is closed? Or does this mean that based on what I'm learning, I need to understand and incorporate something with regard to how things are actually working, related to this interview, related to this opportunity, related to whatever it is, so that if it's important for me to keep it alive, I can have the right kind of conversations. And I can understand where it is in our dynamic that things sort of become fantasy bound or fantasy based, and I don't allow it to get there. There is an element when Mercury goes retrograde that he reveals where we have been too hasty, too cavalier, sometimes complacently cavalier about how we thought something would roll out. Oh yeah, we should be able to do that. Oh yeah, I'm sure we'll find this. Oh yeah, I'm sure this will just, I think we should be able to do it in a couple of days. And then all of a sudden Mercury goes retrograde and we go, oh, we can do this in 2 or in 1 day, or actually we need 5, or, oh, we're not ready. I thought we were, the details hit. And yet at the same time, while Mercury is retrograde, if we are sending communications, especially around those dates I mentioned, August the 4th, 18th, 28th, look at them multiple, look at whatever it is that you're sending. Are they going to the right person? Are you being too quick? Is it clear? Are you saying July when you mean July and August when you mean August? That kind of stuff. Once again, if you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, it could be a time when you feel particularly clear and decisive. But there's something about, with the trine to Chiron and in Aries and the square to Uranus in Taurus, which basically makes me feel like the opportunity for the sort of overall healing and stepping up and making decisions and pursuing a desirable path needs to come from, but has the opportunity to come from, a much more self-confident place. But insofar as some of our opportunities are related to the house occupied by Taurus in our chart, where we had the North Node eclipses till October the 20th of 2023. It could be that some action related to communication, speech, transactions needs to be taken from the Leo part of our chart in order to allow Uranus to move in a direction that is right for us in the Taurus part of the chart. There could be, as the mystery around all of this settles eventually, you look ahead into September or early October and you're like, oh, that Mars-Uranus conjunction on July the 15th, this is what was going on and this is what I needed to address. Coming back to the recent Trump incident for the 3rd time, because I am really, as you know, I look at events and just try to process data. Yep, as I said, Mars going over the midheaven, and I can't let go of that Algol fixed stars and the literature around them. I'm going off on a little tangent. Fixed stars just fascinate me. Partly because the literature around them is typically presented in the same way that a lot of sort of ancient astrological literature is. It's a very, I feel like I'm still interested in data around fixed stars that helps me understand and translate their energy in a contemporary 2024 way. There will be multiple people who will have that midheaven conjunct Algol, I would imagine. But would all of them have an injury to the head or And how many would? And what else from it? So these become kind of interesting. These are the things that I look for, which is what can I see consistently? What can I confidently tell people in readings that then I get feedback, it resonates. It's based on, here's my understanding, here's what I see. Yes, here's what I've learned about it, but here's how I typically see it translating. With the fixed stars, I will glad there are many parts of astrology where I just have question marks and I'm still in observation mode before I really feel like I can advise someone about them. Because where I do feel like I can give astrological guidance, I feel secure based on the feedback I get and the work that I've done. So anyway, I'll just say that. But it's kind of what Algol stands for and what occurred a couple of days ago in Pennsylvania. It's hard to just let that go. It's hard to ignore it, right? Okay, so it's interesting. For the rest of this week, the two other videos I have planned, one is just briefly to talk about the fact that Uranus is going to trine Pluto in 2026. That might be the extent of what I say. But then, of course, I need to talk about the Capricorn full moon on Sunday. And in and of itself, apart from the fact that Mercury squares Uranus on the day of that full moon, but we have other much more important and relative aspects related to that full moon we need to talk about. The Sun trining Neptune, Mars trining Pluto, the full moon conjuncting Pluto, the Mercury retrograde stuff. There are, let's just say, milestones related to Mercury entering the shadow period and the retrograde that occur this week. Mercury trining Chiron for the first time, Mercury squaring Uranus for the first time. But Mercury retrograde is still an August occurrence and we are still in July. So I will stand by my advice. Mercury enters the shadow period. Fascinating that it trines Chiron 3 times, squares Uranus 3 times. I've already told you about the fact that, and it's nice that this Mercury retrograde seems to have a little bit less to do with the kind of dicier parts of the chart, stabilizing the Pisces energy. Although we have other, remember in August, Mars is going to be trining, in August, Mars is going to be squaring Saturn and Neptune. So we can't just kind of ignore the Pisces part of the chart. We're just talking about the Mercury retrograde. The Mercury retrograde itself really seems to very much be around details we need to sort out and things we need to be clear about and learn and understand, so that as things and opportunities present themselves during July, but especially after that August 4th new moon, we understand that we have to go back to the drawing board to some extent to, as I've said, May, June, July are forward-moving months. August is a pause button. And it's a pause button because we want Mercury to say, here's what I need you to know. And it's going to come as an internal aha, because you're in a much more internally ruminating mode with Mercury being retrograde, as opposed to just talking to people about how things will happen and what's okay and what you're going to do and how you're going to go about it. You may not have thought through all the details. It could be as a result of communication. It could be that you're on the phone talking to someone, emails are being exchanged, something's being communicated, go, oh, this is what's going on. I wondered, oh. And you may be like, oh, then this is what this means for this. I've got to do away with it completely, or interesting, now that I know this, I may not know immediately, but I wonder, or if it's something, as I said, you commit to, things about it are going to get rethought after Mercury goes direct. Enough, I'm starting to repeat myself. But the Mercury retrograde has something to do with, in the Leo part of our chart, that is linked to the direction that we're trying to move in. It is not the only energy that we need to be cognizant of, certainly in July. In July, take a look at the weekly overview I just did to understand what I think we should be focused on this week and next week. The Mercury retrograde becomes more of a present and front and center energy in August, but there are other things happening too. The new moon and the full moon in July are glorious. There's a certain amount of stress associated with them, and it's particularly this week as the sun gets ready to oppose Pluto. But the new moon and full moon in August are they're edgy. And then after September, we move forward. It's all systems go. Okay, I will leave it at this. If you would like me to take a look at your birth chart or make an easy to read version of your chart for you, my email address is in the description box below. You can email me there for rates and I can give you that information. If you found this video useful, feel free to share information about this video or channel with anyone you might think benefit from it. If you have not subscribed to my channel already, feel free to subscribe to the channel on YouTube and hover over the bell icon next to the subscribe button. There's a wiggly bell on top. Click on it. You'll be notified when I do new videos. I will stop posting astrology videos on Facebook and Twitter at the end of this month, so please subscribe here. There is a thanks button that you can use to contribute to the channel if you so desire. Feel free to comment or like the video. I would appreciate it. It gives the video greater circulation on YouTube if you feel inclined to do so. I will leave it at this. I've already told you what my next couple of videos are going to be, and I will maintain that it's time to be in action, but also time to put a little bit of a question mark around what occurs between July 16th and August 4th, and see how that ground is retread 2 more times after that, once with Mercury retrograde and once with Mercury direct through September 11th. Just going to be intriguing. I don't think the Mercury retrograde is only about what happens in that period, though. I think it's just, I think honestly that it could be events related to moving forward in May, June, and July that get a reality check in August. That is typically how I experience it. And if you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart and you feel that much more decisive and clear about what you want to do about certain things and are not inclined to ruminate that much, and if that's what tends to happen to you when Mercury is retrograde in the skies, then enjoy that. When I talk to people who have Mercury retrograde in their birth chart, they will sometimes say, I feel so much more in sync, I am so much more productive, I get so much done when Mercury is retrograde. It's fascinating. All right, enough from me. More to follow soon. Thanks.